So a very warm welcome to all the participants who've taken out time to join us here today. We welcome you on behalf of Cambridge International as well as TAISI. This webinar has been organized in association with TAISI, so we welcome all the TAISI member schools and also some national curriculum schools who are here with us today. Uh, my name is Nivedita Bose. I am a Senior Manager for Professional Development for South Asia in Cambridge International. And I have my colleagues here from Cambridge team who are going to be presenting for us today and also taking question and answers after the presentations. Little bit of housekeeping. Your videos and audio has been muted for this smooth flow of the webinar, but you can use the chat box to type in your questions. Please use the question and answer box to type in your specific questions, and we will try to accommodate as many questions as possible after the presentations. Let me introduce you to our speakers. We have with us today our Director for International Network, Mr. Andrew Coombe, who has been looking after international networks from December 2019. He is responsible for developing our relationships with Cambridge schools worldwide and ensuring that Cambridge schools are listened to and have the support they need. He manages the organization's 9 regional teams: customer support, business development, marketing, and communications. He has a strong background in international business development, marketing, and customer service operations. He has over 25 years experience of leading strategy, sales, and marketing teams, principally in global markets of automotive manufacturers and in education. I'm also delighted to introduce Mr. Lee Davis, our Director for Teaching and Learning. He has taken over this position from February 2020. He leads the teams responsible for teacher and school leader development, curriculum support, digital innovation and development, as well as school improvement initiatives more broadly. Lee has been with Cambridge since 2014, mostly holding the role of Deputy Director of Education. Previously, he worked for Aga Khan Academies, an agency with the Aga Khan Development Network, where he held position of Director of Academic Planning and led the design. We also have few other colleagues from Cambridge. We have Mr. Mahesh Srivastav, our Regional Director for South Asia. We have Ms. Vidula Desai, our Marketing and Communications Manager, who is working at the back end, moderating the session. And I will be taking the question answers after the presentation. Unfortunately, we are not able to connect with our TAISI partners, but I would like to welcome Ms. Anuradha Monga, the founder and chairperson of TAISI. The webinar has been materialized because of her tireless effort and work with Cambridge over the past few weeks. And also Ms. Jyoti Ghai, who is the program lead for TAISI, but unfortunately she got dropped from the call, and we welcome both of them as well on the webinar. So without further ado, I would hand over to Mr. Lee Davis for starting his presentation.
Good morning, colleagues, and I really do hope this finds you well and you and your loved ones are well. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today. I realise we are still in a time of great disruption, so I appreciate the time you are giving us. Could I have the next slide, please? I'm going to be talking about 3 things today. First of all, I wanted to just go back a little bit to a time when the world was in the process of shutting down. And I wanted to talk with you very briefly about Cambridge's role in transitioning to home learning and some of the resources and things that we put together for you to help you in that process, because I think they're still relevant. Then I'd like to go through some reflections so far that my team and I have put together in sort of observing, looking at, researching into what's actually happening while learning is happening in the home. And I'd like to share those with you. And then finally finish with Cambridge's role in supporting learning in a time of disruption when perhaps schools are open but not fully, some students are still at home and so on, and perhaps some thoughts about the future as well. So I'll take you through those. Could I have the next slide, please? Okay, so when March came, and for us March was a time of sort of lockdown, we started thinking about how we could harvest and curate resources that were already available to help you with that remote teaching and learning. And what we put together for you was a website linked from our homepage, where we were sharing with you some tools to support this remote teaching and learning, tools to facilitate discussion, collaboration, help sort of create online content, perhaps tools to support feedback and so on. And those were all there, and we harvested those, we curated those and put them together under one title. Then we started looking at what sort of content do we need to create for you, and these were through webinars and online training, and that still continues actually. So you'll see that we've invested significantly in our online training, such that come August, September, we will have over 260 courses actually available for you to take at various times from that period. Again, all to help you as you overcome some of the challenges that are presented through this crisis. We created some resources for you and for your learners, so we're very interested in terms of tips for teaching, tips for learning, so to help you with parents, to help you with managing stress and so on, so lots of things there. And of course, what we were able to do was to bring together ebooks and digital resources from our Cambridge publishing partners. So there's the press, who obviously we have a very strong relationship with, but Hodder Education and Collins as well. And I encourage you to explore these. These are freely available. You don't have to be the Cambridge school in order to see all of this, but just go to the website on the front page, and then there are links from there. Could I have the next slide, please? So what are we seeing then? What are some of our reflections? What have we found? And one of the key things we've been concerned about is study habits. How have students been transitioning to this learning from home, and how have they found that? And we found it's been really interesting to see that those students who have high self-regulation, who are highly reflective in their learning, are thriving under these conditions, but many are not. So those students who we might describe as tacitly aware of understanding, they're not quite sure of what success criteria might look like in any given task or activity, they are really struggling because they don't have the scaffolding, they don't have the support that a teacher would normally provide in the classroom, and the ability for a teacher to do that remotely is more problematic, has become a real struggle. This, of course, is coupled with the fact that we're now asking parents to become teachers, and some parents may thrive again under those conditions. They may find that quite easy to do, but many parents are struggling. Perhaps they struggle with the content, perhaps they struggle with time, perhaps they do not have the ability to actually lead their children through the learning. And this is really interesting and is becoming again a sort of a major challenge, I think, during this time of disruption. We know the effect of the home, however, is very powerful. So if it's not present, if it's not there in the home in terms of the resources, how many students have access to laptops all the time, for example, if those resources aren't there, if the quality of the communication that is happening between the child and the parent is not very strong, either they are not being encouraged, they're not being asked about the task, asked about whether they are able to complete the task, whether they know what success looks like in the task, etc. If that quality of that communication is not strong, then we know the impact, it can be quite negative. Similarly, what parental expectations are. Now, I know traditionally in the Indian subcontinent, parental expectations are high for their children, but across the world, if they are not there, then they'll find that helping their children through this time is again quite a struggle. So we need to pay attention to some of these things as educators, as school leaders, and we need to think, first of all, who needs specialized instruction, which students do require additional care and attention, and as school leadership we need to sort of first of all, identify those people and then work out strategies to reach them. And be careful of those who already struggled in school, and again, what that must be like when they're out of school. Finally, we're really interested in this, the types of tasks that we are asking young people to do at home. And remember what we know about homework. Remember that project work, for example, is highly problematic because often students don't know what success criteria is, and the parents won't either, and therefore just to sort of give them an open-ended task, which often occurs in project work, can be, again, quite problematic. So we ask you to look for tasks that practice what students already know, to further develop what they already know, and particularly lower down the age range to get them to read and read and read. So think about the task really carefully. Could I have the next slide, please? So while you're thinking about this, while you're sort of working through how this is going to happen, we encourage you to worry more about subjects in which parents themselves may struggle. This is particularly true in the sciences, it's particularly true in mathematics, and it's particularly true in history, for example. And be careful about what you're asking students to do. So remember about the task again, and how parents might help you deliver that task. Critically, provide opportunities for you to learn what students do not know. So think carefully about how you might identify the misconceptions or the preconceptions or the things they just haven't got yet, and make sure you build that in. So clearly the role of formative assessment here is absolutely vital. Don't engage them in busy work. Don't just give them something for the sake of it or just to keep them busy for an hour. Think really carefully about that, whether that task moves the learning on. And I would encourage you, as I say, to think really strategically about that. One of the big issues that we're finding is that there is this, what Rob Gordon talks about, social disbonding. So at a time of crisis, at a time of pandemic, the pre-existing notions of community that are physical, that are emotional, that are social, have started to dissipate, have started to separate. And what he likes to talk about is a state of fusion where we try and bring these things back together, and often at a time of crisis that happens, but we have to create opportunities for that to happen. So what we're encouraging schools to do is create opportunities for that social interaction to occur, but in a controlled way, not in open social networks, but more in controlled social networks. So for example, Edmodo and so on. So have a look at that and think carefully about that, about giving students that opportunity to socialize together, not just to learn together. And finally, don't panic if students miss weeks of school. We've got lots of research around previous crises, so whether that's the Hurricane Katrina or the earthquakes, for example, in Christchurch in New Zealand. Lots of research around the impact of teacher strikes, bushfires in Australia, for example. And we know the impact on student performance, particularly in public examinations, is minimal. So don't panic. What's really important here is what you do with the time available to you. And so spend some time thinking about that really carefully. Can I have the next slide, please? So what are we doing? What is Cambridge doing to help you, not just through this process, but in the future? And clearly the future is digital in many aspects. We are going to be launching very soon, just as a sort of test, sort of on a test basis, but nevertheless it will grow very quickly. Topic tests around IGCSE sciences and maths, and you'll get reporting functionality on that. So it's not just about a test maker type environment where you're building tests and you can give those locally, but actually reporting on that. So digital delivery, submission, and then reporting. We are very interested in the role of digital in order to help us put a basket of measures and assessments together to go towards more formal grading and awarding. So we have this endpoint in time in March in India, for example, and in June, but we can also think about assessments that lead up to that point. So it's assessment over a period of time, not just at a point in time, and digital enables us to do that. We're looking at those things now. We're very interested in progress. We're very interested in helping you report how much progress students are making. So it's not just sort of the size, well, it's not just how much, but what is the size of that progress. So in other words, the size of the impact of the teaching, the size of the impact of your education provision. Really keen on that, and that's linked to what we can do in terms of value-added measures. So a baseline assessment, predicting future outcomes, and then seeing when they get to that point, that sort of major formative critical assessment moment, summative critical assessment moment, reporting on the value that has been added by the school. And this is very powerful at the student level, at the cohort level, and it can also help with teacher evaluation as well. So we're very keen to explore that, and that's coming soon too. E-portfolios, of course, so collections of evidence, and again, this links to this basket of measures that I mentioned above, about how we're enabling a collection method where you can put evidence of development, evidence of learning, evidence of skill acquirement in there, and again, we can help with more formal recognition and reward of that. And then finally, we're very interested, so we are working much more closely now with our colleagues at the press, Cambridge University Press, and we are looking at tying up assessment with targeted delivery of resources. And we're very keen to start this actually in mathematics, where our Cambridge Maths colleagues have identified all the dependencies that mathematics has. So for example, if we're looking at Pythagoras theorem, for example, to what extent do students know what a right-angled triangle looks like? To what extent do they know what the two superscript means, so a squared, and so on? So what we do is we uncover what students know and what they don't know. So you go back to what they do know so that you can then start the learning process. And this is what we mean by integrated learning and assessment and the adaptive nature of this assessment. So start uncovering, go back to where the students are such that the learning can continue. Can I have the next slide, please? So I mentioned Rob Gordon. Now, Rob Gordon is a clinical psychologist based in the state of Victoria in Australia, and he's done a lot of research in this area about learning in a time of crisis and what actually happens at that point. And I mentioned about social disbonding, so the separation of our community, the separation of the pre-existing community, and what we need to do actively to start bringing this back together again, creating this state of fusion. Now, what he says here is that members identify with each other because they share the same experiences. So you're going through very similar experiences and you feel strong emotional attachments because of what you've undergone together, and you rapidly develop a shared culture of stories, symbols and memories. And what he's recommending is that you provide opportunities for these stories, these symbols and memories to be shared with one another, and that will help you when you come back together again. As I say, as the crisis starts to diminish, the challenges start to diminish, but you're able to come back and begin that sort of community once more. So thank you very much for listening, and I hand over to the next speaker. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Sorry, Andrew, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, yes. I'm Andrew Coombe. I'm director of the International Network at Cambridge International, and it's a great pleasure to be with you today. And as we all know, these are very difficult times, and they are obviously for all of you in your schools, and the situation will be similar for many of you, but different for many of you as well. And because we work in many countries across the world with many different types of schools, we are very much aware of the different situation that the pandemic is creating in different places, and this is something that we have to consider in our thoughts, and I'll explain a bit more about what I mean. But what we're seeing now is we took the decision in March not to hold exams for our series in May and June, but as things progress, the situation is changing. We have some countries which have managed to get the pandemic under control in their countries. So we're seeing, for example, in New Zealand, life is pretty much back to normal, with some exceptions, of course, and you can't easily travel in and out of the country. We saw China, which was the first country to lock down. In schools are reopening in China, although you'll be aware, I'm sure, that in Beijing there has been a reclosure, a further lockdown, which is localized. And I think that's what we will see going forward. So the situation is changing as we speak, and we are doing our best to adapt to that. What I really wanted to talk to you about today is how we support progression and success at universities. And one of the things that we have been doing continually since the start of the current situation is to talk to universities and university bodies all over the world. So, for example, UCAS in the UK, which represents UK universities, or IACAC in the US, which represents US universities. And we have really important, strong contacts with universities literally all over the world. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, although we serve international schools around the world, and just over half of our students go to the top ranked universities worldwide, it is true in many countries, and certainly in India as well, that most students will end up pursuing their further education, their higher education studies in their own country. And our exams are suitable for those students who want to go to the top Indian universities to do so. And many of our students do indeed pursue their studies in Indian universities. It's worth saying that one of the things that's important is to have the qualifications and the results and the certificates available at the time you need them. Can I have the next slide, please? So one of the things that I'm sure you're aware we have done for schools in India is to introduce a series in March. So exams which take place in February and March, with the results coming out in May. That is something we did exclusively for India, and it means that students then have the results of their exams at the time they need them to apply to the top Indian universities. Students who take the right combination of subjects are able to sit successfully in the competitive entrance exams like the G and the NEET in India. And we know, we have lots of research that shows that Cambridge International A-levels help students to develop deep subject knowledge and higher order thinking skills, which prepares them really well to succeed at university. So this year, we were fortunate in that the pandemic started after nearly all of our exams had been completed in March in India, and the results were able to be issued on time in the middle of May. It's also worth saying that with a Cambridge curriculum, there are no compulsory subjects and there are no restrictions on the subjects. So the combinations of subjects that students need to take, they are free to take. And we know that many of the world's top medical colleges and engineering schools like the fact that students are able to take the combination of subjects and go into a lot of depth in those subjects, which is suitable for higher education in those subjects. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to give you some examples of students in India who have used Cambridge qualifications to go on and succeed in their studies. So here we have an example of a student who's studying at the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, who said that besides the subject knowledge, Cambridge International A-levels have equipped me with the ability to learn independently and gain the other skills essential to research. In particular, the AS level practical exams and the A-level planning papers in the science subjects built a solid base in designing and analysing experiments and has given me the confidence to explore the same. Despite the differences between Indian and IGCSE syllabuses, I was able to obtain a high rank in the KVPY scholarship exam that's heavily based on Indian curriculum. And this, I believe, is thanks to the strong foundation that A-levels have given me to build on. So that's just one example, and we have many more. Next slide, please. And here are some examples of students who have succeeded based on their performance in the G in India. So, for example, one student who's gone on to the Indian Institute of Technology in Mumbai, who took Cambridge International A-levels, and someone who went on to study at the National Institute of Technology in Rourkela. A-level helped me by not loading the book with content, allowing me to study the content thoroughly and in a relaxed manner. At the same time, the course is designed such that it explains concepts at a fundamental level, giving a student a deep understanding of what they're doing. The teaching of concepts allows difficult problems to be solved in a very creative manner, broadening a student's expertise in a subject. Next slide, please. And we've got plenty of examples of students who qualified or who took the NEET in 2019 and are studying medicine, for example, here at Sri Ramachandra Institute of Higher Education and Research, and another at Maulana Azad Medical College, who said the Cambridge A-level curriculum greatly improved my analytical and critical thinking skills, which were not only essential in excelling in NEET to get into MBBS course at MAMC, but are extremely important in the study of medicine itself and are greatly helping me in my study.
Hello.
In my study at medical college. Can I have the next slide, please?
Hello.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Sorry, Andrew, just a minute. Yeah, Jyoti, we can hear you. She's just trying to get in. Carry on, Andrew, please. Apologies for that.
Okay, I'll continue. Thank you. And here, just a couple of other examples. Students who qualified in the CLAT for studying law in 2019 are studying at the National Law School of India and at the West Bengal National University of Juridical Sciences. So these are just examples to demonstrate how studying a course of Cambridge International A-levels is absolutely appropriate and helps students to succeed at Indian universities as well as universities internationally. Next slide, please. And we have students who are able to go on to both private universities but also competitive public universities in India to pursue their undergraduate degree programs. And here are just a list of some of the private and public universities where Cambridge students have gone on to study. Next slide, please. And a note about our work in the United States. Cambridge programs are increasingly popular in schools in the United States. It's one of our fastest growing countries. Not only that, but more than 700 US universities accept Cambridge International qualifications, including all the Ivy League universities. Both domestic and international students attend top universities across the US, and not only that, but AS and A-level qualifications are given credit for students attending US universities. So sometimes students can already have covered part of the course in their undergraduate program even before they start at college.
You can wait for calling.
And for those students who hold 3 Cambridge International A-levels in the right subjects, it's even possible to get a full year's credit in some cases. And many institutions in the US offer credit for individual subjects. We also know that some of the junior and community colleges accept Cambridge IGCSEs or Cambridge International O-levels with the right grades. And the US is increasingly one of the most popular destinations for Cambridge students, but they are also, as you are, I'm sure, aware, students with Cambridge qualifications are able to move on both to the UK and Canada and Australia and many other destinations worldwide. Okay, I'm going to pause there, and I think I'm due to hand over to Christine, but I'm not sure if she's on the call yet.
She's here. I think Christine is here. We'll just request Jyoti to introduce Christine. Jyoti's with us online now.
Thank you.
Hello. Jyoti, can you hear us?
You have called is speaking. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Please carry on.
A very good afternoon to everyone joining from India, and a very good morning to everyone joining from the UK and rest of the world. On behalf of TAISI, the Association of International Schools of India, I welcome all our member schools and learning community, including our teaching faculty members, heads of department, program coordinators, principals and heads of schools, including all our academic professionals in the international schools. Much before the times when COVID was about to hit India, TAISI virtual learning and professional development programs for the year 2020. We are grateful to all our members and learning community for taking the time to reflect and share virtual learning ideas. We sincerely appreciate the time you all spent in reviewing the global situation and recommending strategies for achieving learning goals. Your advice was very helpful and gave us a new perspective on available opportunities. We especially appreciate the offers to connect the others in your network. We then began the process of following up with the contrast in our learning community to partner in this. We also made use of the online networking resources you all recommended to enable the learning plans. TAISI is immensely happy to collaborate with the Cambridge International to present this webinar to all of you. Today we have with us eminent members of Cambridge International. You've already heard through Andrew Coombe and Lee Davis, and you're now going to see, and we all welcome Christine Olsen, the Chief Executive of Cambridge International. On behalf of TAISI and founder chairperson of TAISI, Ms. Anuradha Monga, it gives me immense pleasure to introduce Christine Olsen to the Indian education community for the first time. She has a wealth of senior leadership experience, and it's very interesting to know that Christine has an MA in Classical Arabic and Turkish from the University of Edinburgh. Christine, Ms. Monga hopes to see you in India soon. On behalf of TAISI, I would also like to welcome all the Cambridge and non-Cambridge school members to this webinar. Ms. Monga has been involved with Cambridge International for many years and helping to expand the footprints of Cambridge International in India. I would now hand over the podium to Ms. Christine Olsen to take it ahead from here. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's great to be with you. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to join today's event. I'd like to say a few words before we continue the webinar with some questions. So it's a pleasure to be able to engage with so many Cambridge schools today, and also with TAISI member schools. And we've come together today to think about the challenges we all face and to share ideas on how we overcome them. We have all had to change the way we work significantly in the recent months, and most of that has had to happen at an incredible pace. Overnight, you have gone from face-to-face teaching to remote teaching. And at Cambridge International, we have gone from in-person examinations to predicted grades, calculated grades, and setting up an entire new standardisation process. The main thing I want to say today is thank you. Thank you for adapting so fast. Thank you to our Cambridge schools for engaging with us and submitting all the predicted grades. And thank you for doing all of this while you've had to face considerable challenges at home with family, and also with working in a very, very different way and home situations. We are fully aware that this hasn't been easy. We have been so impressed by the commitment and the engagement of our community of schools in India. Many of our teachers have been very active in this time, using the range of support that we have offered, contributing to our blogs on our website, taking part in our webinars around grade submission, and also reaching out to our customer services teams and engaging with us that way. The close collaboration has been important for us, and I think I echo colleagues' thoughts by saying that in a way we felt more connected than ever before. You have ensured that learning has not stopped in your schools and for your students. All of this while many aspects of our regular life have been on hold. We've wanted to do all that we can to support you with that. So we have introduced a whole range of new resources to enable that, as well as making existing ones free. And I know that earlier in the session today, Lee has talked about that. What matters most to us is that our students can continue their learning journeys. And I'm confident that the assessment system that we have introduced for the June 2020 series will allow them to do just that. Since the system was announced, our university recognition teams across the world have been liaising with universities to explain how the system works and to ensure that universities will be confident to accept the grades that we are awarding. Cambridge qualifications are respected and accepted throughout the world, and universities know that they can rely on the rigour and the standard of this year's awarding system. And Andrew talked a little bit about that just earlier on this morning as well. Before I close, I would like to thank Ms. Anuradha Monga, TAISI chairperson, and her team for organising this event. Thank you also to TAISI Association school members. Thank you to my Cambridge International colleagues who are taking part today and who have helped organise this event. And of course, thank you to our Cambridge International schools. For any schools here today that are not yet members of the Cambridge International community, I hope to welcome you into our family soon. You are always welcome. Thank you. And I think now we'll move to questions.
Thank you, Christine. So my colleague Vidula has done the publishing of questions, and we can start taking them one by one. I'll just read out for the resource people here today. So one of the most common questions that has come up is, will there be a decrease in syllabus load for IGCSE and A levels? If yes, how will it impact college admissions?
Okay, shall I pick up that question and then
Yes.
colleagues can add? So this notion of syllabus reduction, and it's a fair question, but here's our response. That the answer is no. We will not reduce the syllabus content expected to be learnt for the examinations, and there are four broad reasons why we say that. The first is around standards. For us, it's very, very important that from year to year we maintain standards, so that an A level taken this year is equivalent to an A level taken last year and in the years to come. So that's very, very important that standards are maintained, and to do that, of course, it remains that the full syllabus content is considered. The second is that syllabus coverage in schools varies across those schools. So some schools will change the order, so the scope and sequencing of programs will vary from school to school. So it's very difficult for us as a sort of an awarding body to say, that content was not covered in the time that was missed. The third is that, and I mentioned this actually in my talk, that the impact of disruption on student outcomes, particularly in public examinations, again, we've looked at research across the world, across many crises and challenges, and I think I mentioned about Hurricane Katrina, bushfires in Australia, for example, teacher strikes. The impact is minimal actually on student outcomes, and I think that's quite important for people to understand that as well. And then finally, it's this point that Christine finished on, which was around we will never disadvantage our students. So there are always opportunities for us through statistical methods and so on to consider the special circumstances of exams taken in different parts of the world. We have a history of this. It's COVID, sadly, is not the first challenge we've had to address in terms of grade award. So we will always look at that as well. And if I could pick up on the coursework questions, so a number of questions around guidance for coursework and so on, I think that's quite important too. That will come, so we will help you, whether that's group work, for example, and our expectations around that, the challenges around practicals in sciences, etc. We will provide guidance for you on that as we move into the Northern Hemisphere autumn.
Thanks, Lee. Can I just add to that a comment specifically about university recognition of our qualifications? This year, we have worked extremely hard with universities around the world, and we know that nearly all universities have told us that they will accept the grades that are awarded in June in the same way that they would accept grades at any other time. And in many countries, for example, in the US, we know that universities will also accept our qualifications and give credit, give college credit for those qualifications so that students don't need to cover the entire course. If we reduce the content of our syllabuses in future exam series, that kind of university recognition and college credit would be under threat, and it would be much more difficult for us to convince universities, especially in the US, that the qualifications are equivalent. So that's another reason why we would not be reducing syllabus content.
Thank you, Andrew. I think the next question is also for you to take lead on. So with the current unpredictable situation, people are wondering whether the November exams will be taking place.
Okay, well, the simple answer to that is yes, they will. But we also recognize that the situation is to some extent unpredictable, and it is variable in different countries. And I think that makes it different from the situation as we found it for the May-June series, where in almost every country in the world there was disruption to schools. That is not the case as far as we can see for November. So there are most countries, as far as we know at the moment, and most schools in most countries want to run exams as normal. So our plan is to run the exams. But of course, we're not in control of the global situation, so we will keep a close eye on that, and we will have to take account of what the situation is as it develops.
Thanks, Andrew. The next question is, can we suggest an education model which schools can use in case the lockdown is extended? So I guess that's for Lee too.
Yeah, I can pick that up. And again, I really encourage everybody attending this session to have a look at our website and the resources and the advice and the guidance that we provided around teaching and learning when the school is closed, because that will really help you. I spoke about a number of things in terms of the students that you need to watch out for, the opportunities to provide social interaction amongst students, watching out for those parents who will struggle to become teachers at home and so on. So there are lots of things to watch out for, but certainly go to those resources and the things we put on there for you, because they are extremely helpful and they will help guide you, I think, as you manage this for yourselves in your local context.
Thanks, Lee. There's another question, quite interesting, which says that can we have baseline testing across all subjects?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a good question in relation to. So first of all, baseline testing in terms of predicting future outcomes. So using that to sort of see where we expect students to get to at, for example, IGCSE or A level. There's a desire for that. And then secondly, of course, there's the baseline measures such that value added can be measured and also progress. And this is why one of the key reasons why we purchased the Centre for Evaluation and Monitoring last year, and their ability to help us with this baseline assessment. So that would be more for curriculum agnostic purposes. However, we are also interested in doing this for mathematics, sciences, English and so on. And again, you'll see a lot of development there, particularly given the increased emphasis on digital assessment. So you'll see a lot of developments in that area, but we are very keen to expand our baseline assessment capability.
It's worth just saying, if I may, just saying we have baseline testing across all school age ranges. So we have tests for students as they enter school and at every stage through primary and secondary. And also the baseline test that we have in English, maths and science can be used to evaluate potential in other subjects as well, perhaps with slightly less reliability, but still it's possible.
Thanks, Andrew. There's another question pertaining to the requirements for university admissions. So it says universities also need different engagement with content. For instance, is Cambridge looking to introduce medieval and modern Indian history component in our history syllabus? Because that is a requirement for getting government jobs in some states.
I can provide an answer, but again, I invite other colleagues to contribute. So the demand for history to include the Indian context is understood, and it has gone to our curriculum development team, who I believe are considering it very carefully. We don't have an answer for you yet at this stage, but it's certainly something, a message that has come in loud and clear, and we have sent this to our curriculum development teams. So we understand the need.
Can we have more e-books needed for certain subjects in IGCSE and A levels? And there's also a question around access arrangements, any additional access arrangements in the current situation for IGCSE and A levels?
Would you like me to pick that up?
Yes.
Okay, so the ebook question, first of all, you may be aware that we are developing a much stronger relationship. I hinted at this in my talk with the press, Cambridge University Press, who have a strong commitment to digital resources. And of course, those digital resources align to our curriculum and assessment. So this is something, again, that you'll see a lot more of as the time unfolds. In terms of access arrangements, again, I think look out for the guidance that we will issue around what's happening in November, given some of the disruption that's obviously going to occur. So watch out for the individual announcements on those things is what I would recommend.
Thank you. There's another question. In case the November series continues, will Cambridge offer exams for subjects which are not normally conducted in November in India?
I can take that if you like. We have extended the November series to offer, I think, 8 additional subjects that would not normally be available in November. We are not able to offer every subject that would be available in June and not normally in November, but we have done our best to prioritise those subjects with the largest number of entries. So there will be some additional subjects, yes.
Thank you. Are there any updates on the upper secondary Cambridge Science competition?
So I believe that has been paused, hasn't it, for the time being? So that's going through our decision-making processes at the moment, and then we will make further announcements as we start opening up capability in some of these other additional areas. But we don't have a decision on that yet, as far as I understand. But Andrew, I don't know if you know more.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's right. It's current circumstances mean it's very difficult to run it. So, but nevertheless, it's something that was very successful last year, and we had a great deal of interest. So I'm sure we are going to reopen it and make it available as soon as we possibly can when conditions allow.
Thank you. There's one more specific question which probably we can take. It's about a subject, art and design, where schools are requesting the feedback to be shared earlier in case students want to appear for reevaluation or request for reevaluation. So is that a possibility?
Earlier results is always difficult. As you can imagine, we run 3 exam series every year across the world, and results issue times are highly scheduled. You know, it is very difficult for us to actually shift those times. I mean, this is feedback that we can always put through to our assessment and operations colleagues, but I want to be careful about managing expectations around those particular requests, because it is as I say, these dates are firmly set because of the quantity of examinations and assessments that we provide throughout the year and across the world.
Thanks, Lee. There are quite a number of questions around requests for new subjects. So some schools are asking if there is a scope for increasing subjects in the March series, and also around offering some of the state languages as first language. So for example, we currently offer Hindi as a second language. So is there a scope for offering Hindi as a first language for native speakers?
I guess what I would say to that is we have, as many of you will be aware, we have 5 new subjects which will be examined for the first time in March 2021. So we always keep our the availability of subjects under review. We don't have plans to add further subjects at the moment, but I think what it boils down to very often is how much demand is there, and if the demand is sufficient for a subject, then of course we're always willing to consider it.
And that's really the response for the Hindi first language as well. And there are two things to that actually I'd like to say. One is, yes, demand is important. So if we see demand, if we're hearing that from you, then we will certainly consider it. The second, of course, is languages are important to us as an organisation. They are a critical indication of how international we are as an organisation. So those sorts of requests are always considered very carefully by our language team.
Thank you. There's one question which is repeated multiple times about alternatives to AS practicals for the March, the upcoming series. So it would be nice if you could shed some light on that. Any scope?
Yeah, again, look for the guidance on that. You know, there are sometimes alternatives to practical papers, components that can be sat, but look carefully at the guidance that will come out that we will issue around practicals over the coming months.
Thanks, Lee. I think we have pretty much covered all the questions which were there, and there are some questions around whether we'll be able to share the recording of the webinar. Yes, we can share the recording, and we will share the recording with all the participants. I would now hand over to our Regional Director, Mr. Mahesh Srivastav, for closing remarks and word of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nivedita. Thank you very much, Christine, Andrew, and Lee for your presence and share your insight, which will definitely help our delegates to understand our perspective in the present scenario caused by this pandemic. I would also like to thank you, TAISI and Ms. Monga and Ms. Jyoti for their support in organizing this event together. Last but not the least, a big thank you to Nivedita, Vidula, and Charlotte for making this session interactive and taking care of the questions raised today. Thank you, delegate and guests, for this wonderful session, and have a great day ahead.